It's live.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jonathan Hayes. I want to call this meeting to order. This is the general committee meeting. We're meeting on December 14th at 6 p.m. I'd like a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, and I'll second it. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And if we will, also get a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting. And I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then the approval of the November 9th meeting minutes. And I second that. And so I'll approve.
Aye.
And then the first ordinance that we have here is by Mayor Clary and Alderman Roberson and Alderman Edwards.
Good.
Mayor Clary, do you want to talk to us about this?
Yes, sure. I want Alderman Robertson to chime in here a little bit.
All right.
This is what the ad hoc committee put together, several meetings. Russ and I both sat on that committee. I was the chairman of that committee. We feel like they did good work. There were times when we disagreed with some of the individuals wanted to do in the direction they were going. However, at the end of the day, and there were times when every member on the committee had actually what other members of the committee want to do. At the end of the day, this is what we came up with, and this is what we felt like was the best solution to what the board asked the committee to do. And I repeatedly reminded them that this can get changed, this can get voted down, this could go as it is, but there are possibilities once it goes to the board. But it's reflects an awful lot of hard work.
Thank you. Thank you. Alderman?
The only thing I would add is it's uncanny to me how close it is to the county school board policy. In fact, it's probably a little more liberal than the school board policy as far as naming.
Yeah.
So there was a template, I think, that the committee used, and it was the school board's policy, which to me, and I've talked to a couple of school board members, they think it's working well. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for y'all's work on it.
We value the conversation that we may have here tonight.
Yes, yes.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment.
Well, I just want to thank those people that were on that committee and for all y'all's work. It's pretty in depth, and are there any questions or any comments from any of the aldermen? Okay.
If y'all have some questions over the next couple of weeks, feel free to send them to me. Obviously, we can't deliberate by email, but if you have some, feel free to let me know.
It'll come up on the next phone, not tonight, the next.
Not tonight, but the next phone. So that'll be first one in January, I guess. All right. All right. Could I get a motion to approve? And I'll second it. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you. We'll move on forward into resolution 2021-56. Mayor Clary, you want to share with us about this?
Sure. 2 or 3 years ago, we joined a opioid settlement suit that was being handled by some private attorneys that were looking for clients. The board voted to join that suit, knowing that we probably weren't going to get too much from that suit. That suit concentrated very much on cities and counties that operated jails and hospitals. They also were looking for any first responders that had interaction with people people dealing with opioids. So probably 8 or 10 months after we decided to participate in that, I let y'all know that the attorneys had said they didn't want us as a client any longer, for the exact reason I just mentioned. The benefit of us being a client to them was relatively limited. We were contacted by the Attorney General's office for the state of Tennessee. They are negotiating settlement with a couple companies, and they wanted us to say yes or no, because when they go to those companies, they need to be able to tell those companies who is no longer eligible to sue them is an individual entity. So if we say yes, we want to participate in that, we participate with the Attorney General's office, we're no longer eligible to sue them separately. If we say no, we are eligible to sue them separately. It makes the most sense, talking with the city attorney, that we should participate in the lawsuit that was brought to us by the Attorney General's office for the state of Tennessee. The amount of work that we'll have to do is relatively small, but the only downside is we cannot sue them individually. I need to let you know that we're agreeing not to do that. We think that there's tremendous upside potential.
Certainly is a serious problem, the opioids, and during COVID, it's actually gotten worse. I know that our fire chief sees a lot of those ambulances going out and the EMTs. And I'm so sorry for all the addictions that are going on with this, but if this is something that we can participate in and it's good for our city in terms of those, I'm all for it. Are there any questions or comments?
You said if we vote no, we're in.
If we vote yes, we're in,
Oh,
but we can't sue them later. If we vote no, if we vote no, we could sue them later, but I'll tell you, I'm not gonna bring that to board and sue them individually. I think that's a really tough, it's a really tough case for us. to
And you
make.
also mentioned individually. We can't sue a group.
So we're either joining the group or we're not. If we join the group, we can't do both. We can't join the group and then go after them individually.
Gotcha.
Any other questions or comments?
Approved.
Okay.
I will ask it to be on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
And obviously, we're violating the 2-week rule. I think we're violating the 2-hour rule.
All right.
But I'll ask it to be on the agenda tonight because we have to make a decision, I think, by January 2nd or January 4th.
Okay. Thank you for that motion. I'll second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We'll talk about that again here in just 45 minutes. So the next one is Resolution 2021-57. Director Free, will you share with us about Mayfair and what y'all talked about at this last planning commission?
Yes, I will. This is over here right behind City Hall where the Bradford Berry House is located in the Mayfair Plan Development. There's already, I think, NTB and Office Depot. That's phase 1. This property that we're talking about here is going to be in phase 2. It actually hadn't had a final development plan on it. It's had a preliminary development plan. It's kind of been tied up because it had some strings attached to the Bradford Berry House. And now we have a development that's looking to go there. And so they've done their final development plan and they have a way to give the Bradford Berry property and the cemetery to the city, as well as give them, at this point, $100,000 to go toward just stabilizing the structure, not necessarily renovating the structure, but just stabilizing it. One of the things that it's going to keep all the existing uses that were associated with that plan development, but they're going to add 3 potential quick service restaurant uses. So potentially 3, restaurants that could have a drive-through that might be at that location or could potentially be at that location. And so the front of it has 3 outlots. So right here by the bank. So between the bank and sort of where Office Depot is in front of Aladdin, I think there's 3 out parcels. And then behind that is where the Bradford Berry House is. And then to the left of that, I think is another small out parcel. And then behind that is potential for a big box retail or something larger that could be in the rear of the property. And so I can answer any questions anybody has on it.
I just have a question for the mayor, because we discussed it just a while ago. What did the Mayfair, we were just talking about that before we started. The Mayfair, what is that?
So the owners of the house is a trust that is controlled by 2 brothers, last name May. Jack May, I think he's the president of that trust or the chairman of the trust, however it is. And so when they named this development in 2004, they named it Mayfair.
Is that right? That's interesting. Yeah. That's a move.
Okay, I'll second it too, and also we have some other questions. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was at the planning commission meeting the other night when this was being discussed. And I do have some questions. The 100,000, I know this was a question at the planning commission as well. Have we gotten a professional to give us an estimate on that to stabilize that structure and what the cost would be on that? Because
Yeah, we haven't done.
I
we don't
mean,
have any
is that
estimate.
possible to do without owning that property?
I mean, it's certainly going to be very expensive. I think initially the 100,000 was just to go to repairing the roof or putting a new roof on it. And then also, I think that part of that 100,000 goes to putting a fence around the cemetery. And then that's pretty much it of what that would be. But it's very possible, I mean, that that 100,000, it won't go very far in stabilizing that.
Yeah, because at the planning commission, there was discussion about increasing that amount
Yes,
because it wasn't going to be nearly enough to just stabilize and not to even
Right.
renovate anything or do anything inside or anything.
Right.
So I would like to know if it would be possible to get a professional to take a look at it
Mhm.
to make sure that we had enough
They don't
money
expect us to restore it. do they?
to,
No.
no, this is just to stabilize the
Yeah.
structure. I mean, do you think that would be enough to do that? It doesn't sound to me like it would be, but
Yeah, and they haven't had I don't think they've had anybody to look at it to determine that. We'd had to get a third party and pay a third party to maybe take a look at that. I know several years ago when the city boarded it up, I think the city did, I'm not sure what we found, but I think we did look at the structural integrity of it, but I'm not for sure if we actually had a structural engineer or did a full-blown
yeah, because I'd like to,
study.
before we get into it, I'd like to know what
Right.
we're in for.
No,
You
I
know,
totally understand that.
if that's the only amount
Yeah.
that they could afford, 100,000, then what do we have to put forth
Right.
to the project to save it? I mean, that's what we're
Right.
doing, is saving it, right?
Yeah.
Because is it condemned right now?
No, it's not actually, I don't think it's not condemned. So the property hadn't been condemned, but it's not in great repair. I mean, you can look at it. It's not in great, it's not falling in.
So maybe that might be
necessarily.
a project
Yeah.
for us to
Yeah, I
to be
think we
able to
can,
evaluate and know
Yeah.
that, what are we looking at to,
yeah. I
to be
think we
able to
could
do
have
that.
it, I think we could have it looked at. I just don't know in the period of time between now and the January BOMA meeting. I just don't know, if we'll be able to have that done, but I think we could get a third party to look at that and evaluate it. What do you think about that, Jesse?
Yeah, we can
Probably.
get someone to look at it. I don't know if we can get a report in that
Yeah.
time, but we can
Yeah.
certainly,
Yeah,
Do we have
Easy.
engineers on staff that are qualified to be able to,
we don't have structural engineers.
okay, I didn't know that.
Keith, is that classified as historic?
yeah, I believe it is I believe it.
Is it on the
It's not
historical,
on
and
the
that was my
register.
second question.
It's not.
Is it on the historical register?
It is not.
It's not.
Okay, what is it gonna take to get it on the historical register?
More than $100,000. I mean, first off, there's been 2 additions to the house,
Mhm.
so those would have to.
Oh, yeah.
And to restore it that way. But what we have going for us is that we will have no restrictions on that house. If we decide that it needs to be bulldozed, which I hope that's not the case, we can do
Oh, I
that.
would hate to,
Yeah, I agree.
I would hate for
If
that.
we decide to eliminate the 2 additions, we can do that. If we decide to fix it up, we can do that. If we decide to sell it to somebody who agrees to fix it up, we can do that. If we decide to lease it to somebody who will agree to fix it up, we can do that as well. So we have a lot of possibilities. What we do is once we get possession of it, I take it to the Public Works Committee, the Capital Projects Committee, and with several options on it. I feel like overall we're getting an asset. Obviously, we're getting an asset that needs to know.
Okay, so the asset that we're getting is the house and the property, right? How much property is that?
Don't have that
It
right.
was about 1.5 acres.
Yeah, I think that's about.
So the
right.
property where the house sits in the
Yeah.
cemetery, because that was another
The
question about the
cemeteries,
cemetery.
yeah,
Is there a
it's split.
cemetery
Yeah,
there?
the cemetery will be split. There'll be a road in between the cemetery and the house. So that'll be separated. But the house itself is going to be on quite a sizable piece of property.
Okay, and then my other question, and I'm sorry if I'm
No, you're doing
asking a
great.
lot of questions, because
Good stuff.
was at the,
Yeah.
would we be able to apply for any kind of grant money to restore it, even though it's not on the
Yeah.
National Register?
So there are some grant programs out there that I've been looking into, and just actually Lee Peterson just sent me one the other day. It's a possibility. Most of the grant programs from the state, they apply to private companies or private individuals that own historic structures, not to city governments. However, there are some other ones out there that we can pursue, and they may not be specific to historic structures. There may be some other grants out there that we might have to be a little creative to apply for. But yeah, we will do that immediately. We will we'll start looking at those.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
We'll
Before it comes
try to get
before
that
us.
information
I really
in
would
that
like
period of
to.
time and try to get something. So we've got to, but it would be wise to, before we take it, to kind of understand.
Kind of know what we're in
the
for,
condition.
kind of.
Yeah.
And if we need to, maybe ask for a little bit more money
Yeah.
or make sure that we have enough money in our kitty appropriated
Right.
to that purpose, that we do the right, we do it the right way. I don't want to see that
Right.
torn down.
And it's definitely possible. I think it may be possible to get a little bit more money, but where the 100,000 is in comparison to what the deal was in the original plan development or preliminary development plan, getting the property, getting the house, the property, and 100,000 or even a little bit more
Mhm.
it's very close to the deal of what the intent was with the original plan development. So for like example, even if we find, gosh, we really need 500,000, that would probably be too much to get all the land and everything and have the developer give us 500,000. That's really deviating quite a bit from what the original.
Yeah, and that's
intent.
not that's
Yeah.
not where I'm going
You
with
just
it.
want to understand what.
I
we're
just want to
getting into.
understand what we're getting into.
Right.
If it is possible to
Yeah.
ask for additional funds from the developer.
Yes.
And if it's possible for us as a board to see the importance of that structure and be able to allocate and appropriate funds to make that, to stabilize the structure. Because structural is very expensive.
Yeah. Let me see what we can.
And I'm not an engineer, I'm just a regular
I'll see
person.
what we could do on securing somebody to do that. And I'll talk to the developer to see if they have resources. They could do that. Understanding if they did it, I mean, we understand it's coming from the developer, but if it's done by an engineer or
Yeah, like somebody
credentialed,
licensed to do that, yeah.
It's fine. Even if
Mhm.
they did it, it would, at least give us, some basis.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good
Yes,
question.
sir, ma'am.
So having talked to the developer, mostly to his engineer, one of the things they stressed with us is that they gave us more land at this point. They're gonna give us more land than they initially anticipated, which means that it cut down on the revenue they'll make, because they were gonna sell all those other lots by the square foot. And so we've cut some of the money that they would have made off this, so he said, you cut back what they're gonna earn, and now we're asking for more money. So we sort of cut their legs out from under them and said, okay, run faster. So that's, and quite honestly, I think I'd rather have the buffer around the house and have more land. So that's.
Yeah, any other questions or
you,
comments?
committee.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah, thank
Chairman.
you, thank you.
This will come next one, not right.
Not tonight.
January. Okay.
All right, there's already been a motion and a second, and so all in favor? Aye. So that passes. Thank you, Mr. Warren. The next one is Resolution 2021-58, again, by our Planning Commission, Director Freed.
Yeah, what this is we have roughly it's about four square acres outside the city limits. It's in the planning region, and up until about a year or so ago, that we had control of that planning region. We had zoning control, but the county has reasserted their zoning authority and has taken that back. But the planning region is still there. And so with the planning region still being there, then we have the ability, we have the requirement for anybody that's subdividing property to come through us, but we have to do that subdivision in relationship to the county zoning ordinance. So it creates a very complicated, you can imagine it's very
Somebody
complicated.
lost me a couple seconds.
So-
I was glad you didn't
Yeah.
ask me to explain this.
So most of the communities that have a planning region have already gotten out of it. Others like us are in the process of doing it. This will move forward, hopefully to BOMA this evening. It is time sensitive. There's a committee that meets at the state, and they only meet every quarter. So they're meeting January the 26th. So we need to get this so we can get it to them within that timely thing. And it's one of those things, just as a planner, hey, planning region, hey, that's good. And if this was something worth keeping from a planning perspective that I thought really had value, I would be fighting to keep it. But I'm totally opposite on it. This is actually, there's not really anything positive for us to do. And it is a drain on the staff resources that we have, because we're doing somewhat planning out in the county without actually having any real control over that. And so,
This will eliminate that, Will point.
yes, it'll eliminate that.
Yeah.
And an additional thing that it eliminates the confusion of, we've got a development that we just approved on Jones Road and Stop 30 out there in that area where Goodall had owned that property. They've sold it. And there's new developers there that's going to be building 51 homes on half-acre lots out there in that area. Well, it's in the planning region, but it's under county zoning control. So we have no control over the zoning, but the actual subdivision plat had to come through our planning commission. And so that creates situations where, and some of the aldermen may have heard from some folks where, some people may be like, hey, the city can do something about this. We don't want this. So you really can't do anything about it, but we are a part of the process only technically. And so this will remove that for the future as well, where we won't have that confusion. It'll be very clear that's in the county, this is in the city, and each body has the full control over what they have. So, and I can answer any questions anybody might have on that.
I'll be sure, because that ends at our ward in Ward 6.
Yes,
So that would be the county from there forward.
5.
It's 5.
5. Yeah, that one's, I think.
It's only
that
about
one's-
30,
Yeah,
and it
it's-
ends at Jones.
yeah,
That's Ward 6.
On the other side of Jones.
yeah,
Pardon?
It's on the other side of Jones from Ward 6.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's right on the border.
yeah. Currently, it's not in any ward.
That's right. It's the
Yeah.
county.
That's right, it's county.
Okay.
Which
so,
creates
yeah.
the confusion. Yeah.
That's the reason I was
And
asking.
Yeah, it's
had
confusing.
that come up after this was approved, would we have had any input in those 34 homes or those 54 homes?
No, but we
This has a
really,
lot to do with annexation. We
Yeah.
no longer aggressively annex, and so
Yeah.
therefore,
that's right.
we're
And the-
okay with the county.
Yeah, the planning region was set up back when cities had the power to annex at will. That's all stopped. That faucet's been turned off and probably never going to be turned back on again. Planning region was done where that, hey, if things are developing outside the city and we can annex it whenever we want to, then we want to make sure it meets all of our guidelines. But that's just not the case anymore. And especially as things develop and you get homes established out there, we don't have, at this point, we don't have any established neighborhoods that are in the county on the edge of the city requesting annexation. And that's probably, unless something changes at the state legislature or there's some other thing we can't really predict right now. I doubt that we're going to have, large swaths of developed neighborhoods requesting to come into the city.
You're going to explain that tonight in Bowman, right?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Yes,
Yes, sir. Alderman.
On Jones Road,
yes.
have they made any suggestion to be annexed in our discussions with them into the city? This 51 or 54, because we're going to be providing fire service. That they don't have a volunteer fire department close to them, so we're going to be providing
Yeah.
services to them, but so have they made any overtures that they would like to consider being annexed?
Well, I think they probably would have considered it, but knowing, generally speaking, that probably the chances of them successfully being annexed and getting a more dense zone than the 1 acre per lot that was out there, that wasn't the path that they chose to do. So it was potential that they could do that, but weighing it, I think they felt like there's probably not a whole lot of likelihood we could get half-acre lots in the city, because that's increasing density above what we previously had, which was 1 acre lots out there in that particular area. So I think any of these developers like this, the developers there, any of these developers, I think, would be interested. They're all very interested in annexing to the city, but it comes with, they want to get a little bit more density. And if they can get a higher level of density in the county and not have to go through a process, an approval process, then, chances are they'll go that way. If they thought they had a fairly good percentage shot of getting something a little bit more dense, like in this particular case, probably if they thought, hey, if we could do, 15,000 square foot lots and end up, instead of 51, end up with 70 homes, then I think they would have been very interested in annexing, but.
So they would want to quit pro quo.
Huh?
They would want to quit pro quo.
Well, they would probably want more density to go through the process.
Yeah.
Because right now, the only process they have to go through is just subdividing the property and doing it. They don't have to go through the zoning approval process. But just like this, I mean, it's happened years ago but this is something that could happen is some of these things could get developed out in the county and developments could then come to the city and say, hey, we're fixing to start the whole construction. Do y'all want us to come in the city, and accept what we have? And so we may be faced with that at some time in the future, because there is value. Let's just face it. Most of us, me and my family do, most of us live in the city. Okay. And there's a lot of value to live in the city. When you live in the city, if somebody in your house is having a heart attack or there's some kind of health issue, not only are you going to get first-class ambulance care, which you do countywide, but you're going to get first-class care from our fire department, which a lot of times is the difference between life and death. Same thing with our fire rescue and our police department. If there's an emergency, generally speaking, regardless of where you are, you're anywhere from 6 minutes to 10 minutes at the most, maybe, or 8, on a response. And not just a response of somebody showing up, but somebody that's qualified, and not just one person showing up, without any backup. You're going to have 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 people, looking after your needs. And so that establishes a lot of value.
So
And you don't get that when you just live just outside the city limits.
So Keith, and I'm sorry to ask these probing questions,
It's okay.
but if a developer comes in and is interested in annexation, how does the staff handle those? I mean, does the
Yeah.
staff make the determination? Hey, we don't think it would be favorable, or does it come to a committee or BOMA?
No.
How is that? What's the mechanisms?
When somebody's talking about annexation, first, I talk with them about what the possibilities are, and then they weigh that risk. On several annexations, I'll have a conversation with the mayor and just share with him that, hey, these people are thinking about, a potential annexation. And, and get his thoughts on that as well. Maybe the mayor can speak to that, but.
Okay.
We would much prefer to annex somebody that we're providing a lot of services to anyway. We'd like to get their property tax.
Yes.
But as Keith said, it comes with that quid pro quo very often, is the reason that they are offering to agree to be annexed is because they want a higher density. They want to make more money off their property. We've had some success with that by letting them know what it is that we have available for them, and they don't go quite as high in the density. But we haven't, I don't think anybody has made it through the whole process. I don't think anybody has actually started the conversation to be annexed and actually gone through the whole process and gotten what they wanted from us, not just to being annexed, but also the density they wanted. The key to that, and we've talked about this many, many times, is to quit providing free services to people outside the city. Right now,
Which will be a discussion that
Yeah.
your committee probably need to take up eventually.
Yeah.
So,
And probably the most recent fairly good example from a couple of years ago would have been the Baird Farm annexation. Of course, that involved two things. That involved something that was clearly surrounded by the city. It just geographically made sense. Plus, it was that east-west collector, connection that was important as well.
and they were very clear to us that they were willing to stay in the county because the county was going to give them this.
Yeah.
What can the city offer as far as density?
So it's just it is a difficult thing, but probably from the develop, and it's always a developer that's most time looking at an annexation for a development, and they just got to weigh what the how the current winds are blowing on different things. And we do, here in our community, that we have a lot of development pressure. And so we have a lot of things where traffic and different growth related things that make it challenging. But we're also faced with areas that we're already providing services pretty much for, or just like feet away from. And within those band of areas, it would in a lot of sense make sense to bring it within the city limits, even if it meant, not necessarily high density development, but something comparable to what could happen in the county. And there will be a lot more development that's going to occur north of us that's within county zoning. So we'll see a whole lot more of those types of things that are going to occur.
Any other questions, comments?
Couple of comments.
Yes, sir.
So the way I understand
push.
it, the way you're explaining it now is it's in the planning region, right? So it would fall under county guidelines with development. They wouldn't have to come to city. So the county's development plans are totally different from the cities as far as hydrant locations, water supply, the size of the homes, which I don't think we have any regulations in the city. But obviously, if they're over a certain amount of square footage, if there's not enough water to provide extinguishment for their fire, then that's problematic for us.
Right.
And as Mr. Roberson was saying, obviously, we're probably going to get dispatched to that, which is problematic for us because we don't really have any say in anything. And I think that's part of the MOU that we've been trying to negotiate with the county is we're not trying to make you do everything the city does, but we'd like to have feet at the table to have those discussions so we know what we're going to be up against if we get called out there at 2 a.m. And as you spoke, the northern part, Long Haul Pike, that area, it's going to take off at some point.
Yeah.
And when 7's done, obviously that's going to be the station that's going to be closest to some of that. So I think that just kind of reiterates the fact of the MOU and how important it is that we try to negotiate that at all costs because of what we're going to provide to those folks out there. And if it's encouraging for those folks to come into the city, because we do offer 24/7, not knocking volunteer agencies, but they have jobs to provide food and pay their bills, and they're not there like we are. So I think it's important that we continue on the road that we've been doing with communicating with the county and how important it is for this, because we are going to be out there and we're really not going to have any say in what's going on out there. And that's problematic for us.
Yeah, it's either the county pay for our services when we go out there, or city residents pay for our services when they go into the county.
So true. So what happens is if we send 2 engine companies in a truck out there, then the rest of the city here loses that protection, and we have to finagle apparatus around to provide the protection that the taxpayers pay for here.
Yes.
And it increases the workload for us. It's nothing that we can't handle, but it certainly takes away from what we offer our citizens here.
We provide a pretty good fire insurance policy for the county without expecting any premium for that insurance policy.
That's right. And Chief, just since Friday night, approximately how many calls have we had because of the storms and
A bunch. I spoke with Mr. Eckenroth. I can tell you, we had 2 cardiac arrests in the middle of all of that. And we had a save out of that. The gentleman walked out of the hospital yesterday.
Okay.
On top of everything else that happened. Crews have been really, really busy, no different than Trace and his group. They've been really busy. So everybody's chipped in and done their part, but it's been crazy insane, as it typically is. If anybody's been here through any other tornado or any other flooding event, we've come together really well and overcome a lot of things in a lot less time. And we're going to continue to do that because that's what we're supposed to do.
You're doing a good job.
You're doing a great job. Everybody is. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, everyone. My goodness, the coordination of it, working with other cities. We've got one more here, and that's resolution 2020.
No,
We need to take
We need
action.
to vote on this.
Oh, okay,
Need
okay.
a motion in a second.
A motion, and I'll second it.
Okay,
All in favor? Aye.
great. Now we can move.
Thank you, Mr. Waters.
No.
And so this next one is resolution 2021-59. Also, this from the planning director. Three.
What this is this is the urban growth boundary. So the urban growth boundary is beyond, it's what's beyond the city limits. But we don't have any jurisdiction there, so there's no subdivision or zoning regulations or any other regulations that we have there. The urban growth boundary for our city and for all the other cities in Sumner County, it's just the boundary that says, hey, we could annex all the way out to this area if we were invited to do so. But another city can't go in the area where our boundary is. So this just makes good neighbors between us and all the other cities, where that it's clearly defined, where you can only annex out to a certain point. You can't start annexing beyond that point into our area, or we couldn't annex into Goodlettsville's area or Gallatin's area. And so what this is we've been working for the last 3 years. The planners in the county have, and we've come up with some really minor changes that kind of clean up the urban growth boundary. And that's what this is. And this also is going to go, I believe, to that LGPAC committee that's at the state that's meeting on the 26th. So that's going to go to the full BOMA this evening as well. And I can answer any questions about it. Again, this was all urban growth boundaries, planning regions, all that stuff. All that stuff was set up when cities had great authority to annex pretty much at will. And they do not have that authority anymore.
Any questions at all on this one? Comments?
And I think that area is generally, I think it's maybe 12 square miles. I think that's right. The planning region, that's our kind of our outside. I think it's within that. I think it is within that. Just to make sure.
All right, and I'll second it. All in favor? Aye. Is there any other comments or questions before we adjourn?
You did a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Do you move we adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Thank you all.
Thank you, Keith.
Steve, we just need to
Thank
keep him on our prayer list. He's apparently feeling under the weather.
We could
Yeah.
use some of that money.
Yeah, we all get that way sometimes, don't we?
Yeah, with honoring Pat's memory
I
tonight.
went up to.
Steve really had to be
I went
sick.
up to Pony Express up there on the Gulf Road.
Yeah.
Had a big sign, code. They failed the test. What do you call it? The over test.
Oh, yeah.
Most of them failed it. They had to test.
Oh, good thing.
Yes. Hinder our ability to annex
Thank you.
in the future.
You know, that's for
property. It doesn't harm.
But if you're gonna
Yes.
No,
take it in.
it just defines.
Take
It
care of it.
just defines.
In some
It
ways.
just makes
Does
it
those
like
limits.
this.
I mean, does it?
That would be
Aaron,
Yeah, that would be a nice
Yeah,
start.
because it is.
Aaron, it is.
No, actually,
For-
I think it actually added a little bit. You know, that deal we had with,
For special events. I don't
You can
know.
go ahead and we're done with the meeting.
It's right there. I'll stop there.
Have it.
Yeah.
maybe
We can end it.
Turn left. Move, down the curve.
Office.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
unusual